Here we fucking go. We're getting ready for the finals, and so I'm going to do a little preview of 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid. Now, we're going to do a little bit rewind, kind of like Dragon Ball Z of previous episode, uh, and the fact that I think, let's recap what kind of just happened, which was that I think 100 Thieves look much better in their mid game, but there were still some little bit of a blunders. So first game, I think that essentially they just got 200 years, Cloud9. Although it should be noted that if Vulcan didn't get caught around, I think it was 11:35 is the timer, where they were just beforehand they had killed Huhi over, behind the red side jungle of 100 Thieves. And so Vulcan greedy recalls in that little bush, behind red buff. And then Abadage catches him, same with Closer, and they kill him. But more importantly is that FBI is then allowed to push something like 3 waves. He crashes 3 waves into the turret, and more importantly, he gets all 5 plates. So not only, previously they went over in the top lane and they used Herald to get all plates up there, but then he gets solo gold for the plates down in bot tier 1. So just complete fucking disaster for game 1. Also, I would have liked to see Camille instead of Ornn for Someday in game 1, but it's kind of showing Someday's weakness as far as his champion pool, but we'll get into that section later. Game 2, clearly, Closer can have a clutch factor, right? Because he was getting sick late game kicks to put his team back into it, which was really nice to see. And it shows that he can step up even further than maybe what we had previously thought. I mean, that's not to say that Closer isn't a good fucking player. He is. But now he has that added factor of like, okay, he can be clutch in certain moments. You just have to give him the chance or give him the champ. So game 3 showed, I think, a decent weakness out of the 100 Thieves bot lane. And the fact that Cloud9 just said, fuck it, we're all out aggression. And they went there constantly over and over again. And 100 Thieves, they just kept slipping up over and over as well, too. And when it seems like when you put the 100 Thieves bot lane into a corner, they fight like rabid dogs, but they don't fight well, right? They get incredibly flustered. They go for plays that they probably shouldn't be going for, and they try and match aggression with aggression, which is not the best way to do it sometimes. So we saw that in game 3. Game 4, I think Closer, he pressed his early, he got early double crab, which is fucking bizarre to me, because if you notice, if you go back to the game, I think it's at 3 minutes into it, Blabber goes up top lane because Fudge is pushing up his wave, assumingly because he says, hey, I want to crash my wave so that I can recall. And Blabber's like, okay, even though that there's both crabs up right now, and I think he's taking one of them, so I should probably be taking one, but okay. And bizarre, right, for fucking Blabber. So he does that. And then essentially, Closer is able to push his double crab advantage. He's always up in XP. You saw them contest that Gromp, and I believe Closer was level 5, and then Blabber was level 4. And so that's why they could kind of go in there and kind of bully them around a little bit. And I think you saw what happened at 15:45, where Vulcan tries to ward. I think he's going for a ward in the Pixel Baron bush, and Closer catches him out, and 100 Thieves are pretty close to him as well. And this leads to a massive dive top lane where, Closer is able to use the Herald in order to fucking pop the top tier 1 turret. They get like 4 kills or something, and then they get the tier 2 turret as well too. So it was just a complete fucking train wreck once that happened specifically. But I think one big note to take away from that is Someday also got Camille, and he did not look that hot on that pick, even though 100 Thieves were winning the entire time. And, he goes for that stupid play mid to where it's like a 1v3 or something, and then he gets Abadage killed as well too. So overall, not impressed with Someday's play on Camille. But overall, I think you can have maybe a little bit more confidence with 100 Thieves than what they showed previously against Team Liquid. They have certainly shored up some of their mid-game weaknesses, but you could still see that there are weaknesses from this team. Now, to recap on Team Liquid, this is like a fucking Young and the Restless recap. It's a very old school show. My mom's used to watch that. Anyways, Team Liquid, I think they come in with a sick, threatening Jace from Elfari from Game 1 against 100 Thieves. And then Game 2, I think, was largely just a draft diff because Team Liquid tried to get cute with Sejuani, and then 100 Thieves counter with Vayne because, Reaper's just like, cool, you want to play fucking Sejuani? All right. And then along with Ziggs not being able to push the wave enough bot lane because there's just such a mismatch in the jungle and they're scared of the ganks, right? So there's a complete, lack of synergy when it came to just the entire draft of Team Liquid. I thought that was an awful draft. Now, Game 3, we saw, I think, a massive blunder from Jensen at 31 minutes into the game. If you guys remember, they had already gotten Baron, and then they're pushing down into the bot lane, right? And they're at the tier 2. They had already taken that, and they're about to go into the inhibitor. And Jensen, he's way ahead of the game, and he distorts in, and then gets fucking Lissandra ulted, and that just completely fucking wipes the game for Team Liquid. And and they were ahead this entire time, especially Jensen. Jensen was doing phenomenally this game on LeBlanc. And then at 41 minutes, they're both fighting at the Elder Drake, and Jensen gets a nice chunk onto Someday because those two are in the pit versus the rest of the teams are outside the pit kind of dancing around and whatnot. And the rest of TL actually step up too close and get caught by a rel engage, and that just completely fucking wipes Team Liquid, even though Jensen did get a nice chunk. And if Team Liquid would have just backed up, as he gets the chunk and then distorts backwards, they would have been a phenomenal position in order to contest that dragon. So it seemed like there was just a little bit of miscommunication when it came to that, or maybe just not respecting the rel engage as such. Now, Game 4, we saw Elfari get Camille into Gnar, and Closer basically had to go up into top lane to patch that lane because Elfari was just so ahead in CS and experience. And then Team Liquid fucking sneak that Baron, right? With the Baron portal in the back of the pit. It was 26 minutes in or something. And so this puts TL on the forefront, right? And 28-45, there's this massive team fight at Krugs, and Team Liquid get a 4-for-0. Now, and this was because Closer had engaged, I want to say, on Elfari, and so Elfari had to use his ult, and the rest of 100 Thieves are all running in there, all fucking gung-ho and shit, and you got Team Liquid all trying to bounce back and clamor over there and stuff. And this is a shittier version of Captain Flowers' team fight breakdown shit, shoutcasting. But if you go back and rewatch that fight, FBI actually takes a greedy route because both ADCs, they're fighting at mid lane, and Team Liquid actually own that entire red buff area of the jungle. And so Kalista, which is what Tactical is playing, versus Tristana FBI, Kalista can just go down direct path. Now FBI has to go around, go near the Wraith bush, and he decides to cut into it, going into the entrance of red buff. But Kalista is already there waiting for him, and he even question mark pings him, just I think he's going this way, and he just doesn't respect it. He just keeps going down, and he's like, fuck it, I need to get to the team fight. And Tactical is smart because he's like, dude, I'm Kalista, I'm just gonna 1v1 the fuck out of you. And he does, chunks him out. FBI can't even get into the fight. Then Tactical is able to get into the fight, and they get a 4-for-0 and completely just demolish 100 Thieves. And this is the little slip-ups that you see from FBI. Game 5, Elfari gets his Jace, and he just does immense amount of work in team fights. He's able to completely use his poke at key targets and at key moments, and then switch to hammer form and just completely wreck team fight. So now let's go to the lane matchups. I think this is what we're all kind of waiting for, because these lane matchups, they're a little bit more peculiar from what maybe the surface might be. So Someday versus Elfari. Someday has a completely shallow champion pool. I think this is very noticeable. Certainly the teams have to notice this if all the fans notice this, as well as the analysts themselves. Someday has only looked good on on Gnar and Renekton. And he has the Band-Aid of Ornn. That's it. Those are his 3 picks, which really puts a shitty hamper on 100 Thieves draft and how they want to play the game. So this is just very bad. And that would mean also too that 100 Thieves would want blue side more than red side, because then they can actually pick Someday's champions beforehand. But I believe that Team Liquid have side selection since they are the first seed and they're in the upper bracket, right? So Team Liquid are definitely gonna pick blue more than red, of course, and that's going to punish Someday's champion pool. You also have Jace on the board for Elfari, as well as Camille too, because, I mean, let's face it, some days Camille didn't look too hot, especially in that last game. So I would 100% give this top lane matchup over to Elfari. I think it's heavily one-sided, and I think if 100 Thieves can't check Elfari, it's kind of going to be a stomp, especially if Someday doesn't get his champions, specifically if he doesn't get Renekton. I think even if he gets Gnar, it's still not going to be that big of a problem, because also Elfari has GP as well too. That's not to say that Someday isn't a decent GP. It's not as good as Elfari, but it's just more of an option for Team Liquid. So Team Liquid just have a smorgasbord of champion select options, and they also aren't required to force it to where that they have to be on blue side in order to even have a modicum of a chance of actually shoring up a champion pool, just like 100 Thieves do. So that's gonna play a big factor. So watch out for that, guys. Closer versus Santorin. I think this matchup it's so much more Santorin favored, because I think Santorin is the perfect jungler into Closer. And this is because I think what Closer thrives in is early skirmishes. And if you don't give him the option to do early skirmishes, then he slowly starts to wane. Now, we did see that he, has his clutch factor in later plays, which will, I think, further play into this entire matchup in terms of the dynamicness of Closer himself, and that he is more dynamic than maybe we first had thought. But I think what makes Santorin special kind of as a jungler is that he actually does cross map, I would say, better than any other jungler in the league right now. And maybe that might be a Team Liquid special as well too, but Team Liquid, and specifically Santorin, just does cross-map plays way better. It's like, okay, so if Closer is in top lane, Santorin's going to make a play bot lane. If Closer is in bot lane, Santorin's going to make a play top lane. And so there's just this read that Santorin is able to do, to a pretty high degree. And I think that's one of his strengths going into this matchup is that if he never even needs to try and skirmish against Closer, that's not playing into Closer's strengths. So I think you have that aspect. And then also, I think one of the big negatives is that this entire matchup probably still does require banning Diana and Viego. I think those champions are just really good for Closer, and they aren't as good for Santorin. And you even saw this within the 100 Thieves versus C9 matchup as well too, is that they C9 constantly banned Viego or Diana, and Diana, I think, was banned the entire time. So you just don't want Closer to get these picks, which then cripples your entire draft phase too. But this is like the other factor of it. It's like, okay, so Someday is a cripple, but also Closer's champion pool is kind of a boon for them. So does it balance out? No, I don't think it does necessarily. I think it's still a net negative for 100 Thieves, but I will say though that Closer is at least allowing it to kind of bridge the gap in this sense. So that is very important because, yes, it does give breathing room for Sunday's champion pool, which is very important. Now, mid lane, Abadage versus Jensen. This one's tough to say because, not to, sound like a dick, but it depends on which Jensen shows up. We know what Abadage is going to show up. He's very consistent. He's kind of the same guy. He's able to at least neutralize the mid lane, and then he's able to help out other lanes. It's not that he's using his advantage to then go over to other lanes. No, he's just neutralizing that lane and then going to other lanes, and hopefully he'll snowball those other lanes of maybe patching up top lane or certainly snowballing his bot lane, which 100 Thieves like to do, or their jungler as well too. So now, as far as Jensen is concerned, he's been on and off in the past. That's not to say that he is playing poorly in the playoffs. I think this is some of the better play that we've seen from Jensen in terms of just his entire playoff run. I think he's looking really good, especially on the LeBlanc pick, aside from that Lissandra play. But I think this is going to determine, Jensen basically is going to decide on if he actually wants to win this mid matchup or not. It's on him in order to determine if he actually wins this. It has nothing to do with Abadage, in fact. And on top of this, I think one of the positives is that Jensen doesn't have to go top lane. He's not required to do that. First, I think Abadage is more so because that hole kind of needs to be patched up in the ship, kind of like how Closer is demanded to go up there occasionally too, in order to counterbalance the entire top lane discrepancy. Now, team fighting wise, I would actually give this to Jensen a little bit more. I think Jensen is just very intelligent about how he maybe pokes out the enemy team, especially on his LeBlanc play, or just how he navigates the entire team fights and how he just does his damage necessarily. And so with that, I think I would edge it out to Jensen, but it's only if he's like not off the ball, right? He doesn't even need to play the game to like a crazy high level degree in order to get an advantage within this lane, but he can't shit the bed like he sometimes actually does. So just watch out for that. FBI and Huhi versus Tactical and Core JJ. So with this lane, I want to point out some of the champion pool differences in the fact that I think Tactical looks way better on Kalista. So you have that going into this entire bot lane. If Team Liquid want to do the 2v2, FBI obviously looks great on Aphelios. We just saw him do mad damage. But both champion pools actually look good for these ADCs. But I think Tactical's champion pool looks a little bit better with he has Ziggs in his pool as well as Kalista over FBI. And we could actually see that 100 Thieves are actually afraid of the Ziggs pick because we saw that banned the last time that these two teams played against each other. And then you look at the supports themselves. I think Huhi's champion pool is actually a lot more flexible. He's able to play like the set, more comfortably, just more engaged picks and whatnot. And I think what's going to come from the difference here is that 100 Thieves, they thrive off the 2v2. They want to isolate the 2v2 and say, hey, fight me in lane, fight me like a real fucking man, and don't go doing all that Roman shit and whatnot. And Core JJ, obviously, he's the Rome king. Right? He's a Roman king. Jesus. And so this is a clash of styles, right? This is to say if 100 Thieves can make it to where you have to 2v2, then it's going to work in their favor. If Team Liquid can kind of do the roaming style, then it's going to work in their favor. So it just depends on exactly maybe how the draft matches up, or how, I guess, the early advantages that maybe either team can get in the bot lane. That's going to determine, I think, the outcome of the bot lane itself and whether one person can do their style or not, because clearly each team is better at, those polar opposite styles. So that's going to be one of the confusing things to see. I edged this bot lane out a little bit more towards Team Liquid, only because I think that they're able to actually roam and escape the 2v2 better than 100 Thieves can enforce the 2v2. I think with such picks as Ziggs and also with Kalista, which is just an inherent bully, lane bully anyways, that in itself kind of patches up the 2v2 disadvantage that Team Liquid has. So you're going to want to look out for that entire just weird draft phase that might actually determine exactly the style that is going to be allowed versus the roam versus the 2v2 matchup. It's going to be really interesting. I think that might be the most interesting part of this entire matchup itself. So how does Team Liquid win? I think they're the clear favorites. I think everyone would agree with that. And I would say red side ban Aphelios. They have actually been doing that against Team Liquid, or against 100 Thieves anyways. Team Liquid, I believe, had got a blue side all three times, and then they had to go on red side twice, and they ended up, picking up the red side ban of Aphelios. So it's clear that they don't want 100 Thieves, whenever they're on blue side, to be able to pick Aphelios in the first part of the draft phase. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think you pinch some days champion pool of Renekton and Gnar, more on emphasis of Renekton rather than Gnar, because I think that Elfari plays quite well into Gnar. He both has the GP and the Jace in order to play into Gnar. So you aren't worried about the Gnar pick at all. I would say, in fact, let them pick Gnar in the first part of the draft phase, because Elfari is much more flexible with those two champions that he can play into Gnar. Punish the 2v2 aggro bot lane heavily, and whether that be picks like Kalista, or if you can get your jungler down into the bot lane, that also works too. Maybe in order to coordinate a dive bot lane, maybe something like a TF might also be in the works, to where you could punish the bot lane over and over again. That might also work out as well. Also, notice the constant ban of Thresh in multiple different games of 100 Thieves. Punish that. If they value that pick so much, or rather what it is alluding to is that they can't play it, and they ban it both on red side and on blue side. So if they're doing that on both sides, that means that they can't play it. Hence, which shows you, especially on blue side, you can tell when people can't play a pick is they'll ban the OP pick on blue side. That is immediately a telltale sign. So don't worry about banning it whatsoever in the entire draft phase. And that forces another ban pick from 100 Thieves. So just keep that in mind if you're Team Liquid. Let Elfari isolate the lane in top lane. He's clearly the better top laner, so just let that lane be isolated. Maybe try and ward up a little bit. Maybe have Jensen use some of his resources in order to go top side in order to help Elfari. Maybe get that lane pressure, or get the wards up there and kind of light it up. And then I think you also too just always have the choice of scaling for late game as Team Liquid, because if you look at the difference between these two teams, Team Liquid just has the more intelligent late game in terms of their decision making. This is very clear, and this still seems to be a weakness from 100 Thieves themselves. And not only that, it showed too against their series against Cloud9 that they also have a weakness in the beginning portions of the lane phase. It seemed like Cloud9 had an advantage in the lane phase almost always, and that their bot lane is incredibly easy to punish in terms of that if you're able to get the better of them in the 2v2, which I don't know if Team Liquid can necessarily do with their 2v2, but maybe if they get aggressive enough picks, like I said with the Kalista, maybe they can actually do that. 100 Thieves, how do they win? Force the 2v2 bot lane. Fucking ban Ziggs, because with Ziggs, the reason why Ziggs is such an important pick when it comes to the Team Liquid composition, or rather their theory or play style, is that they want to unlock Core JJ to where he could roam, and also for tactical to farm safe. And so if you get a Ziggs pick, he can automatically just clear the wave from range. So you don't have to worry about tactical at all. So I say force the 2v2 bot lane, try and create the draft to where it forces that 2v2, and then you might have to ban Ziggs in the second part of the draft phase. Prioritize some days champion pool. If you can get them Renekton, fantastic. If you can't, try and go for Gnar. Obviously, you're going to want to maybe even sacrifice your jungle pool a little bit. And if you can get blue side, that's going to work out even better. Obviously, pick blue side if you can pick blue side. And then remember that Team Liquid is just not afraid to cross map you at all times. So what you want to do is try to bring the fight to them and do it early. So just recognize the plays in which they can actually cross map you. And I know that's easier said than done. But if you can recognize those plays, maybe you can try and counter the counter of what Team Liquid maybe are trying to think that you're trying to do. And I know that is way harder than what I just stated. So with that said, though, I think that Team Liquid will actually take this series. I think they're looking really good, and I'm going to predict a 3-1.